Where you work matters. In a world filled with distractions, we have to figure out a way to break through those and focus. Imagine a glorious sanctuary where your focus is 110% and distractions bounce off of you like bullets off of Superman. And there's evidence on evidence that distractions hamper performance. Maybe that's a lot of noise, maybe that's improper lighting, maybe that's low air quality. All of these things not only decrease your ability to focus, but decrease your cognitive performance and your ability to get questions right. So what we're gonna do to fight all of this is we're gonna build a sanctuary, a deep work sanctuary. Let's get into it. So the first thing we need to think about is that environment really matters, because what your environment is going to affect your physical and mental state. A cluttered and noisy environment results in exactly that level of focus, a cluttered and noisy focus, while a clean, quiet, and organized environment results in that quality of focus. In one study, participants were asked to listen to an audiobook, and while listening to this audiobook, they were either set in a very sterile, controlled lab environment, or they were allowed to wander outside of the lab, so imagine beakers, people, noises, things like this, while listening to the audiobook. And what they did is they saw the number of times these people were distracted when listening to the audiobook, and they also tested them at the end of listening to this audiobook. Now, what they found was for the people that were walking around outside of the lab, distraction rates were 33% higher. They also performed 20% worse on the test. This is a significant result, right? Because having a organized and focused work environment could improve your focus by 1/3 and improve your performance on a test by a letter grade or more. And these results are repeated in experiment after experiment after experiment. And these other experiments did various things, including adding loud noises, adding distracting imaging, having the participants switch tasks a lot, or they just asked them random questions while they were trying to do something. For example, they asked them the question of what's 9 times 13 while they were trying to perform some laparoscopic task or surgical task or something like that. So we're going to keep those factors in mind when we're designing our deep work sanctuary, but we're not going to get there just yet. First, we need to figure out, why is deep work so important? Why do we want to achieve deep work? Well, deep work, popularized by Cal Newport, says that deep work is where the real stuff happens, where the real gains happen. Shallow work, in opposition, is something like texting a friend or cleaning up your apartment or something like that. But superficial work or shallow work isn't where the real big things happen. That's where deep work comes in. So deep work might be something like writing a book, or filming these YouTube videos, or studying for a test. This is where the real intense work happens. And what might happen during these deep work sessions is you actually enter into a flow state. And why is this important? Because one study that studied people over 10 years found that people who are in a flow state are 500% more productive than people who aren't. A distracted environment might stop you from entering into this deep work, from entering into these flow states. So we want to make sure we can enter into these deep works and potentially enter these flow states. So what might this entail? Well, first you have to figure out what you want to do and how you want to do it. The next thing I would consider is, why is this task important? Finally, I would schedule time for doing these deep work sessions, hopefully in our new deep work sanctuary. So how are we going to build our deep work sanctuary? Well, the first thing we want to do is we want to have a dedicated space where we're going to be doing this deep work. And what we're going to do is use classical conditioning to superpower our ability to focus and work in this place. So what is classical conditioning? Well, there's this cool guy named Pavlov, and what he did is he took a couple of dogs and started feeding them. Amazing, right? But every time he would feed them, he would ring a bell. And what he did after a certain amount of these exposures is he would stop giving them the food and just ring the bell. And what happens when a dog sees food, right? It salivates. But what he saw was, after he did these exposures, he would ring the bell and the dog would start to salivate without the food being there. And this is exactly what we want to do with our deep work space. We want to find a place that we can dedicate to deep work, and every time we sit there, we want to start doing the deep work, so we condition ourselves that when we sit in the seat, when we go to this place, when we open this computer, it's deep work time. So start to picture this dream deep work sanctuary. Can you dedicate a whole room? Can you dedicate a desk and a computer to this? Can you just dedicate a certain space in your space that is only a deep work zone? There's gotta be one place you can find in your apartment or your room or wherever you work that can be just yours and that you can just dedicate to deep work. Every time you sit in that space, every time you go to this location, That's all you're gonna do. Now, what I actually do is I don't have a specific room to it yet, but I will when I have the monetary abilities to do that. But what I actually have is another setup on a desk with a different computer, a different chair, and everything like that, where I only do deep work. And then I have a desk and a chair kind of in another part of the room, which is where I just do my regular work like emails, texting, random internet research, stuff like that. And because I've been doing this for 2 or 3 years, I know when I sit down in the deep workspace, it's time to get to work. So the next thing we're gonna do is we're gonna optimize our lighting. When workers' environments are improperly lit, their performance and efficiency suffers. And what studies have found actually that you wanna aim for a color temperature of about 4,000 degrees Kelvin, and you wanna aim for a lux, that's a brightness of about 1,000. But what beats both of those things is actually having your workstation next to a window. So if you can set up your deep work sanctuary with a window where sunlight comes in, that's perfect. But of course, if it's dark outside or you don't have access to a window, try and have overhead lights that are sufficiently bright, like fairly bright, and they're set to this color temperature of around 4,000 degrees Kelvin. Now, if you want to level up this tip, just one more thing you can do is you can start to change your lighting as the day goes on to optimize for sleep. So in the beginning of the day, you want to aim for a bluer light that helps basically hit the back of your retinas and tell your circadian rhythm, listen, it's time to wake up, it's time to get moving. And as the day comes to a close, you want to slowly warm this light up until about 3 hours to 1 hour before bed, optimally 3 hours, like at a minimum 1 hour before bed. And why do you do this? Well, first of all, you want to make sure you wake up properly, but second of all, if you get high quality sleep for a good duration, then your performance, your focusing ability is all going to be better when you enter your deep work sanctuary. The next thing we want to think about when designing our deep work sanctuary is what is the noise we're going to be surrounded with. And I'm not talking about visual noise, I'm not talking about any other kind of noise than the actual noise hitting our eardrums. So 181 workers in a factory were assessed based on their productivity and the noise levels they were exposed to. And the noise levels they were exposed to was between 70 decibels, which is about the sound inside of a car, and 90 decibels, which is the sound of kind of yelling at each other in a shouting conversation or the sound inside of a subway. And what they found is there's actually a negative correlation between increasing sound levels and productivity, with the highest sound levels having the lowest productivity, so at that 90 decibels being around 56% productivity, and the lowest noise levels having the highest productivity, so around 70 decibels being at that kind of 80% productivity or efficiency. Also, evidence shows that once we start to go above these 70, 80, 90 levels, our efficiency dramatically drops. So the fourth thing we want to think about when designing our space is ergonomics, right? What did the ergonomic experts of the world say is the best desk setup? Is it a standing desk? Is it a sitting desk? Is it an exercise ball? Is it 17 monitors? Is it one monitor? What does the evidence say? Well, in regards to standing and sitting desks, there really isn't much evidence, unfortunately. What the evidence does show is that you don't want to be stationary for an extended period of time. So what I do is I have a desk that goes between sitting and standing, and every work session, so maybe every 30 minutes or every hour, I alternate between the two. And here are some other tips from the ergonomic experts of the world. Overall, everything should feel as comfortable and as natural as possible. For your chair setup, your hips should be as far back in the chair as possible. You should adjust the seat height so your feet are flat on the floor and knees are equal to or slightly lower than hip level. Once you've done that, you should adjust your backrest to 100 or 110 degrees at a reclined angle, and you should ensure back support with cushions if necessary. And then you should reposition frequently so you aren't in a static position. As for your armrests, you should adjust your armrests so your shoulders are relaxed and your arms are by your side, not splayed out like this, maybe splayed out a little bit, but that your arms can rest comfortably by your side like this. And your keyboard should be exactly in front of the position of your relaxed elbows like this, right? And it's actually not recommended to put your wrists on a wrist support while you're typing, because if you have the position perfectly here, your hands should actually be levitating above the keyboard and typing pretty perfectly. Now you can let your wrist rest in between typing and stuff like that, but as for monitors, evidence shows that 2 monitors increases productivity compared to 1 monitor, but beyond that, the evidence isn't great. I would just aim for 2 monitors. And when you're sitting in that position that you just set up, the top third of the monitor should be at eye level, and it should be arm's distance from your face. As for taking breaks, you should take a 1 to 2 minute break at least every 30 minutes, and then a longer break, maybe 5-10 minutes every hour or 2, where you get up and move around. And then as for your eyes, you can use the 20-20-20 rule. Every 20 minutes, look 20 feet away for 20 seconds. And this helps reduce eye strain and can help treat dry eyes. And finally, the final thing we're gonna do for our deep work sanctuary is we're gonna declutter the space. Try and remove absolutely everything that's not necessary from the room, from the desk, from your setup that you don't need to work. And the reason I'm trying to do this, I'm not trying to make everyone a minimalist, but is for the next step that I'm gonna say. And the next step is we wanna personalize this space. We wanna make it exciting. We want this space to be enticing and fun. It shouldn't be a cold prison where we have to enter in when we wanna do a deep work session. It should be something that we're excited to go to, where we can start to accomplish our goals and do good work. And it's a similar idea to when you have to crate train a puppy, right? When you're crate training a puppy, they need to learn that being in the crate is okay for their anxiety and mental health, and also for your sanity, right? You need to be able to leave the puppy alone for a certain amount of time, but you don't want to make this a scary place. You don't want to make this a place they're forced to go into. So what do? You make it covered in sheets and nice pillows, and there's toys everywhere, there's chew toys. You put treats in there, and you make it an event when it's time to go to the crate when you're initially training them, right? And we kind of want to do the same things for ourselves in this deep work sanctuary. We want it to make it an event. We want to make it a great place that we go to. So what are some ways you can make it a really nice place? Well, maybe you add some plants, some nice pictures of friends and families. Maybe you invest a lot into the monitor, the desk, the computer setup. It's going to be so awesome to sit in this setup and do good work. Maybe every time you go to this setup, to this deep work session, you have a nice tea or your favorite snack just ready waiting for you in this zone. And finally, maybe every time you sit there, you listen to some awesome music on your awesome headphones, and hopefully not too distracting from the deep work, like some nice epic music or ambient music or classical music, but something that you really enjoy. So every time you sit down there, it's a nice time. And then after a while, right, you shouldn't have to entice yourself to go there because it will become a habit. The more you like your deep work sanctuary, the more often you'll be there. Number 5 is we want to set boundaries. We want to set boundaries for ourselves and our friends and family members. This sanctuary should be exactly that, a sanctuary. This is a place that your friends and family are aware that when you go into here, you're going to do deep work and you probably shouldn't be disturbed. Now, if you're disturbed for an emergency or something like that, that's completely okay. Or if you just want to goof off or you're done studying or working, again, that's completely okay. But just don't do it in the deep work zone. Get out of the zone, leave the zone. We want to keep our classical conditioning as intact as possible in this zone. Again, wasting time is completely fine. Just don't do it in the sanctuary. And finally, number 6, we want to make this a habit. Now, James Clear from Atomic Habits says it takes about 66 days to form a habit. I think this is a little bit lenient. I think it probably takes around 90 days to form this habit. So that's the amount of time I would dedicate to forming the habit of working, getting, or accomplishing deep work in this deep work sanctuary. Can you commit yourself to 3 months of deep work? What times during the week will you work in the sanctuary? For how long will you work? What will you be working on? Keep this up for 3 months, and I promise you, you'll have done some of the most amazing work you've ever done in your entire life. And you will also have established this habit to stick around in your brain and in your life. So overall, how are we going to get to building this amazing deep work sanctuary to change our lives and change our ability to focus? Well, number 1, we need to understand that deep work's important so we can achieve that flow state. Number 2, we need to realize that our environment really matters. Noise, lighting, and distractions really affect our ability to focus and complete good work. Number 3, we actually need to build this deep work space, right? Focus on lighting, focusing on a quiet environment, focusing on making it a really nice decluttered space with stuff that we enjoy. And finally, we need to set boundaries and make this a habit. Talk to friends, talk to family, let them know that this is important to you and you're going to be spending some time dedicated to working in this deep work zone.
Now, it's not only important to optimize your workspace at home, but what about your actual workspace where you go to work? And more broadly, what do you want your actual job, what you want a large portion of your life to be? Today's sponsor could very likely help you out on that in a world-impacting way. Thank you to 80,000 Hours for sponsoring this video. Essentially, they're a nonprofit that helps people find fulfilling careers that solve the world's most pressing problems. Have you ever taken one of those career quizzes that ask you how sociable are you? Do you like working outside? Do you work well with others? And then it tells you should be a structural engineer, but it doesn't take into account the actual best available evidence for finding a fulfilling career. 80,000 Hours has done over 10 years of research with the academics at Oxford University into exactly that. If you care about what the evidence says and you care about going beyond just following your passions, 80,000 hours can definitely help. Oh, and they provide everything for free forever because 80,000 hours is a nonprofit. Their only aim is to help solve global problems by helping people find the most impactful jobs that they can. If you join the newsletter now, you'll get a free copy of their in-depth career guide sent directly to your inbox. Just head to 80,000hours.org/Zach with an H. So to get started planning a career that solves one of the world's most pressing problems, sign up at 80,000hours.org/Zach.
But that is it. Please send me the pictures of like your deep work sanctuary. I'd love to see them, and maybe I'll post like the coolest ones on my website or something like that. But I'd also just like love to see them because I love to see people's workspaces and stuff like that. But that is it. Thank you so much for watching, and I will see you on the next one.